So today we're going to be talking about CHESS sponsored versus a custodian model broker, and we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of each broker, and I'm going to hopefully try to explain it to you in a very simple way and as if you were a complete beginner. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you would know that this whole setup and the whole background and everything like that is looking pretty different. And that's because we recently moved into this new place and it's completely brand new, and it was being constructed for the past year or so. Now this house is finally built, so now we finally moved in, and I couldn't be more excited because this means that the production quality of these videos is hopefully going to improve quite a lot, and hopefully the setup is looking much better than it was previously. It is not as dull or as dark as it was previously. We've got this nice blue color that's going on, so hopefully it's going to be much more vibrant and much more exciting. So guys, if you do find any value in this video, please leave a like or subscribe. And once again, I'm not a financial advisor. Please do some research on your own as well. This video is not financial advice. I'm not recommending to you one broker or another. This is just my research, and make sure to do your own as well. Let's jump into it. So before we begin, firstly, let's define what CHESS actually means. So CHESS stands for Clearinghouse Electronic Sub-Register System. Okay, great, but what the hell does that mean? Let's jump into it. So basically what it means is that it's a system that's used by the ASX that pretty much records all the shareholdings, and it basically manages settlement. So pretty much the CHESS system allows ASX to keep track of who owns what, and if you are part of this CHESS system, you get your own individual HIN or HIN as people call it. And every time you buy a share, all of your shareholdings are recorded against this HIN number. And the HIN number is basically a unique number that pretty much identifies you, and it basically puts all of your shareholdings against that number, and it means that you have full and direct beneficial ownership of your shares. Now, HIN stands for Holder Identification Number, and it basically means that the broker itself does not own the shares. The broker does, however, facilitate the buy and sell. They pretty much manage the whole transaction side of things, but when it comes to actual ownership, you have that full control. So if you keep on using that broker to buy and sell shares, each time you do that, the CHESS system will record those transactions against your HIN, and it pretty much keeps track of what you own and what you no longer own. So for example, if you've bought some AGL shares and now you've bought some beta shares ETFs, all of them are going to be stored on your HIN, meaning that you have full ownership. Now we'll look into the pros and cons of the CHESS system in just a minute, but I just want to let you guys know that it is possible to actually have multiple HINs as well. Now typically this will happen if you've used multiple brokers in the past. So personally for me, right now I've got about 3 different HINs, and the reason being is because when I first started to get into this world of investing and trading and whatnot, I signed up with NAB Trade back in like 2018. So I got a HIN number for NAB Trade. And then a couple of years later, I discovered SelfWealth with their flat fee trading. So with SelfWealth, I got a different HIN number. And then lastly, a couple of months later, I discovered Perla, which is more built for long-term investors. And that's the broker that I do quite like, and I like what they're trying to target. So with Perla, I've got a separate HIN as well. So I've got 3 different HIN numbers. Now, this isn't necessarily bad. It just means that the admin process is going to be a bit tedious. It's going to be a bit annoying. So you might have to do a couple of things duplicate times because you've got multiple HINs. Now, what I mean is that let's say that you buy a beta shares ETF with SelfWealth to begin with, you will need to register that ETF and add all the bank details and all the dividend information onto Link Market Services or Computershare. And then if you buy the same ETF with, let's say, Perla a couple of months down the track, you will need to register that ETF once again, do the same process once again to make sure that you can get all the dividends and all the other stuff in your bank account. The same thing applies for dividend reinvestment plans. If you've got 2 HINs with 2 different brokers and you want to set up the dividend reinvestment plan for both those brokers for the same ETF, you'll need to do this admin stuff twice because you do have 2 brokers. An example that I'll give you is that I bought Asia for the very first time with SelfWealth like last year, and then I bought it again with Perla. So I had to register that ETF twice with Link Market Services, and I pretty much added in all my banking details to make sure that I can get those dividends into my bank account. So if you're in the similar situation with 2 or more HINs, you will need to do it twice or more. So right now, some CHESS sponsored brokers include all the big 4 bank brokers, I believe, SelfWealth, Perla, and some other big ones as well. And now that we know how the chess model works, let's have a look at how the custodian brokers operate. Some popular custodian brokers include companies like Superhero, which is quite popular. They have $5 flat fee trades. You also have IG and a few others. And this is the main model that the US uses as well, so it's pretty popular. And the main difference between the custodian model and the chess sponsored model is the fact that those shares are actually held against the broker's HIN, not yours. So pretty much the broker is actually holding those shares for you on your behalf. And it basically means that the broker has custody of your shares, and the broker themselves are recording those transactions of buying and selling internally on their own systems, not the ASX. The ASX is not really keeping track of the individual ownership, but the actual broker themselves is keeping track of those individual ownerships of their customers. However, when the ASX looks at it, the ASX pretty much sees all those shares held with the actual broker's name. So for example, the ASX will have a look at those shares held with Superhero, but then Superhero will keep track of who owns what shares individually, internally in their own systems. I hope that makes sense. So pretty much what happens is that all the communications from companies when it comes to the notifications of their annual general meeting and some other things that companies like to send out, those notifications will be sent to Superhero or whoever the broker is, and then the broker themselves will pass that information down to you. So what this means is that when you buy and sell shares with this broker, the broker themselves has an internal sub-register of who owns what, and this system basically means that you will have to put full faith in your broker that they are going to hopefully stay alive and keep on operating for the next couple of years or however long you're trying to invest for. And of course, it also means that you need to have full reliance, full trust in them to make sure that their internal record keeping is being done correctly and whatnot. Okay, so now let's have a look at the pros and cons of each system and some things that you also need to consider, starting with the chess sponsored system. Now, of course, the number one benefit for the system is the fact that it is quite secure. The safety is the number one aspect of why people choose chess sponsored brokers, right? So pretty much if the broker themselves was to go bankrupt or crash, so for example, if CommSec was to go broke, which is pretty unlikely, it could happen still, or if any of these new brokers like SelfWealth, relatively new brokers like SelfWealth or Perla, if these brokers were to crash one day, if they were to just shut down and completely close up shop, the ASX themselves will have a record of you owning those shares, meaning that if the broker collapses, those shares are still held under your name. And this is because there's a proper record of it in the chess system, and pretty much what happens is that the shares pretty much get transferred from one HIN to another, from Perla, let's say if they collapsed, from Perla to some other broker that you use, and it's as simple as that. It is quite minimal to no risk to the actual investor. So of course it does give you that peace of mind to know that your investments are going to be fairly secure. Now the second benefit is the fact that it may also suit long-term investors, right? So if you're investing for a very long-term time horizon, and we're talking a couple of decades, 10 plus years, ideally you really want a broker who's going to be there for the long term, that's going to be hopefully alive in the next couple of decades, however long you're trying to invest for. Now also think about the future value of your portfolio down the track, right? So as you start to invest more and more money, your portfolio is going to be worth 5 figures, then 6 figures, and hopefully 7 figures, maybe even 8 figures down the track. And losing that amount of money and putting that much money at risk is very emotionally draining. Even just thinking about it, you work very hard to save money, then invest money, and hopefully make that money grow. And to have that money potentially be at risk is a very scary thing to think about. So personally for me, that is one of the biggest reasons why I choose a chess sponsored broker. I'm of course investing for many, many years down the track, for 10 plus years, and I want to make sure that my investments are going to be somewhat secure moving forward, so I can at least have that peace of mind. Now the cons of the chess sponsored system is the fact that it is quite outdated, and that's often very costly for brokers. And what they do is that they pretty much pass that cost down to you as the end customer. Now think of CommSec and the big 4 bank brokers. They pretty much charge $20 per trade originally, and that is quite a lot of money to be putting down just to buy or sell shares. Now of course these big 4 banks have lower priced offerings now, but it is still quite expensive compared to other offerings out there. And chess sponsored brokers are generally more expensive for this reason, and if you look at SelfWealth and Perla, they charge $9.50 per trade, and this is still more expensive than Superhero, which is $5 per trade, but that extra $4.50 that you're paying is to get that added benefit of having a CHESS sponsored broker. Now the thing about Pearler is that since they're geared more towards those long-term investors and trying to help investors buy ETFs and whatnot, they do have a couple of free ETFs on offer from ETF Securities, Van Eck, and eInvest. You can pretty much buy those ETFs completely brokerage free as long as you hold it for over a year, and you only pay the brokerage once you sell. So if you do want to check out Pearler, there should be a link in description, and you can use this code right here to also get a free trade and a free kind of investment credit to get you started. Link in description. There's of course a referral link in description for SelfWealth as well. So let's have a look at the pros and cons for a custodian model. Now, of course, the first pro is that it is super low cost. Think about Superhero at literally $5 per trade. It is so cheap, and we're getting very close to $0 of brokerage. You know, we've come very far from the days when we were paying like $20 per trade. It is literally a 75% reduction, so it is something to be very kind of excited about. At least we're not quite there yet with $0 of brokerage, but of course we're getting very close. The other benefit is the fact that it allows us to invest in the US market with $0 of brokerage with Superhero and Stake, pretty much offering $0 of brokerage on US shares and ETFs. And that's because the US doesn't use the CHESS system as we talked about earlier. So the custodian model allows us to invest in those types of markets. And of course, there is a risk there, but at the moment, this is one of the only ways to actually access the US market. You do have to take on that bit of risk using the custodian model. Now, some things you may be able to do to spread out the risk when investing in the American market is that you could try to use different brokers. So you could try to use Stake or Superhero or IG markets or CMC markets and try to kind of diversify the risk. But of course, the risk is still going to be there. Benefit number 3 is fractional shares investing. So pretty much the custodian model actually allows that to happen, to pretty much allow you to buy a split section of a share. So if you wanted to buy Amazon and obviously you think a $3,000 share price is a bit too much for your budget, you can pretty much buy a quarter of that share and split it down as much as you wish and get access to Amazon still by buying fractional shares. A lot of brokers offer this, but the most common you can use to access the US market from Australia is Stake. There's a link in the description as well. You can check it out to also get a free trade. That's a referral link, but go check it out if you're interested. And then lastly, it may also be good for day traders because lots of trades are happening and you need a super low cost to make sure that obviously the brokerage doesn't cut into your margin. So if you're trading with say Superhero, you're only paying $5 per trade. So that's going to really help you to kind of increase your profits if you're doing those frequent trades. Now, I can't really speak for the whole day trading crowd because I don't really do day trading anymore. Those days are pretty much over. I've lost a lot of money doing that sort of stuff, so I'm only investing for the long term. And plus the thing is, if you're a day trader, you might not even care about having a CHESS sponsored broker at all because you're pretty much buying and selling shares so frequently, you're not really thinking about the long term too much. So the fact that a broker might go bust wouldn't really be a concern to you anyways because you're buying and selling things so frequently, so you might not even hold shares for the long term anyways. And then lastly, looking at the cons for the custodian model, of course, it is going to be pretty risky. If the broker goes bust or if there is an internal system collapse, the broker is pretty much holding onto the shares on your behalf. So it might mean that you might not get your money back, or you might have to wait some years to actually get the money back. Now, realistically speaking, a broker going bust is a pretty low probability event. It doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. However, it could still happen theoretically. It is a very low probability event, but the consequences are very huge. As of course, you could lose a lot of money, so you do want to be careful with this. There actually has been a broker collapsing in Australia that was a custodian model broker in the last 10 years, and people are still waiting to get their shares back as of this day. So you do want to be careful. This stuff is, as I said, very low probability, but it can happen theoretically, and you want to be very careful. And with companies like Superhero, you also want to be mindful of the fact that this is still a startup. It is still a relatively new company, and the chances of startups going bust is much more common than an established company going bust. So you do want to factor that into your decision as well. Now, one thing you could do is that you could buy shares from Superhero at a very low cost and then you can pretty much transfer those shares to a CHESS sponsored broker of your choosing. I believe this is possible, and I think the other way around is possible as well, but do make sure to contact those companies just to know about the fine details. Now, full disclosure, personally, I have not done this. I've pretty much never transferred shares from any broker to a different broker. So if you are looking to do it, make sure you email them, call them to confirm if everything is all good, because the last thing you want is things to go wrong. After all, it is your hard-earned money, it's your hard-earned investment. Now, if you're someone who's looking to invest in shares, but you don't really know what all the different terms mean, like buy, sell, high, open, low, all these different terms, you might want to check out this video right here. This video pretty much explains how to buy shares and what all those things mean. And if you're looking to invest with very small amounts, you might want to check out this video right here. This is the ultimate guide to micro investing in Australia. This video compares all the top 3 micro investing options for Australians. Check these 2 videos out. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. And with companies